Welcome to Rewilder's Journey. My name is Mikela Kles. Today we're going to be looking at Esther's rewilding journey. Adventures in urban rewilding. I'm going to be interviewing my good friend Esther Davis, who lives in Illinois, about her adventures and journey, what brought her into rewilding, and what her personal struggles are as an urban rewilder. Welcome to Rewilding Journey podcast, and today we're going to be talking with Esther here, and she will be talking a little bit about her journey rewilding in an urban setting. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here. Excited for your podcast and your interviews getting started and all the stuff you're doing these days. It's pretty cool.
Now, you and I first met in the Gothic community, which is what helped lead me to my personal journey in rewilding. And I wanted to ask you, because you're still involved pretty heavily in the Gothic community in your own way, what is it like for you being part of both the Goth and rewilding communities?
Well, it hasn't really been a problem. Like several of the people that I invited to join your Gothic homesteading and rewilding group accepted. So I mean, most of the people that I communicate with don't have a problem with it. A lot of people who are pagan, even if they're not doing, even if they're not actually rewilding, they respect it.
Yes,
At least that
true.
they seem to. I haven't really run into problems with that. Now, this is not natural fiber. Trying to figure out how to do my look without getting into that stuff. This eyeliner is like super old. I haven't bought any in a while. Lately I have not kept my appearance up for some time. But that's something I'm serious about changing. There's no scene around here, so there's like nothing to go to right now. Not anymore.
For a lot of places.
So, but I got some, I went to Dollar Tree and I got these little, I got these little jars of activated charcoal that you're supposed to use for your teeth. And I'm gonna, when I get my kitchen together, I'm gonna be making some of my own eyeliner and lip stuff. And until then, I'm just not doing this very often, and I'm just using what I've got sparingly because I don't want to buy any more of this plastic tube stuff that I don't know what's in it, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm excited to start making some of my own stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, except for the fishnet, most of this was secondhand. So sometimes you can get it secondhand and then you're not driving more production of stuff. This was on Halloween clearance. And I was like, okay, for that price, I can't walk away from that because my old one is ruined. So
I understand.
I'm trying to avoid, like, I don't buy plastic Halloween stuff anymore. I go with ceramic or metal, and a lot of times I have to tell myself no about stuff that I'm like, that would look so good. No, no, I'm not doing the plastic. I'm not doing the vinyl. Forget it. There's discipline involved heavily.
I know I'll do is if I see something at second hand that's old and has lasted, and I'm like, you're gonna last a while longer, and I know how to dispose of you properly. So I hear you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to dispose any of that stuff properly, so
A lot of it is cutting
just
it up.
don't buy it. And I not even, I used to go and get all that stuff on clearance after Halloween every year,
Oh, yes.
cutting it up.
So what was it that really brought you to your rewilding journey personally?
I wonder if maybe, um, well, I always had kind of a wild woman fascination of this sprite in the woods kind of side of my personality. And I think my closest I'd have to a more traditionally feminine vibe would be that. Um, I like the dragons too, and the snakes and the gargoyles. But
Fair.
no, it was a lifelong process. My grandfather, he grew up on a farm. He had 1 1/3 acres in a small town, and he taught me about gardening. He instilled in me a love for growing things. And I read some books about some different ways of doing it, like wide rows for your scatter sowing, and you kind of mix stuff together, and then they help each other out, and they actually grow better than if you put everything X amount apart in a single row. And I was like, so that doing things differently. I was
Yeah.
picked that up in my early or mid-teens. I was reading about it. I was like, I'm gonna do that someday. But I think the ultimate, as far as actually rewilding goes, rather than just gardening, was in college. I majored kind of accidentally in anthropology. I was going to try to major in music, long story, but I transferred to St. Louis University without having been able to get my audition in. And then I was still not able to get my audition in, so I majored in anthropology. I took an anthro course to fulfill a requirement, and I was like, oh, but both of my anthropology instructors, I ended up having to drop out because of tuition going up. But both of my anthropology instructors were passionate about indigenous rights and how the environmental destruction doesn't just destroy the environment, it destroys people,
Yeah.
about ethnocide, which is when they lose their culture, and how sometimes that leads into genocide because their way of life is lost and they don't always just magically pick up a new one, and then people start dying. Um, and then then there's diseases they're immune to or not immune to, things that your body is used to eating or not, and it can end up leading to drops in population and death. And I was becoming aware of that, and we were going to do a class on it at the community college, and it didn't end up getting launched. But I asked the teacher about what was the textbook for it, and I've still got it. It's called Victims of Progress by John H. Bodley. I could not get through that book. I still haven't gotten through that book. All I was able to do was mostly skim through it, and that was enough to about give you nightmares and make you physically sick. It's like, I can't live like this. But one of my intro courses, we learned about how uh, things that lead to famines, like the potato famine, was caused partly by they just were heavily reliant on one crop, and then they hybridized it so much for what they wanted. There wasn't enough genetic diversity. And then when blight hit one plant, it took the whole thing out, and it was such a catastrophe. And they're like, that's what causes a lot, that drives a lot of famines.
Yeah.
And the
And the fact
malaria
that native
problems in
to
Africa, starting
island.
with the deforestation, and then a lot of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, potatoes
Huh?
weren't even native to the British
What
Isles.
was
They're
that?
an
I
American
couldn't
crop.
quite catch that. It broke up a little.
Oh, sorry. Potatoes are not even native to the British Isles. They're an American crop. So they
Yeah.
weren't even raising something that was native to their region. So it was even more prone to blight because of that.
Are they?
Mm-hmm. And potatoes were brought to the British
Yeah.
Isles after the discovery of the Americas.
See that it wasn't emphasizing the, yeah, I believe you. We didn't hear that part.
Oh yeah, I my ancestors came to
We
America
didn't
in
get
part
all of that
because of the potato
information,
famine, so
but
and I studied in
I
that.
didn't know that because the German lady that I met in at a factory I worked in, she said that they had potatoes with everything in Germany. There were so many different ways they made potatoes, so I would have almost thought that it was native there because they had so many of their recipes that they use it in.
It's
But
been
it's just been
commonly
there a
used
while,
since
I
the
guess, and they
late
really fell in love with it,
1400s. It's been
I guess.
500 years, so
But no, we didn't know all of that detail, but it was enough.
yeah. Yeah. It just, the more you get in depth with those things, the
Yeah.
more you find out just how
Oh
multi-layered
God.
the
Yeah, that did it. I was like, I
colonization,
can't do
even of the
this.
British
I can't do
Isles
this.
over the centuries were, and realizing that so many of the things that we did here in the Americas were done in the British Isles long before they were ever done in the Americas, and throughout different colonization periods of different parts of the world, going back to Roman and pre-Roman times. So it's just so multi-layered, that generational
Yeah, we
colonization.
didn't invent it.
No, we didn't.
They act like we invented it
We
sometimes.
we
Well,
passed
we,
on the traumas
the
that were
people
done
who
to our
started the
ancestors,
country. You
basically.
know, the first, sorry. Yeah, the
No,
first, go ahead.
keep going.
Probably. The the um the first immigration laws in America were meant to keep my mom's family out. Like literally my mom's family. Her grandparents on both sides would have been if they'd actually, the law was passed in 1917, and that's the year that at least my paternal my maternal grandfather's family got here, was to actually the Slavic people, which is what they Polish folk were completely blocked out supposedly on paper, but you'd have to, get it going, and they didn't apparently have it going yet, and so they got here. I know they didn't speak English when they got here. I know they didn't, but they were supposed to be able to speak English to get in, and I know they couldn't. So they kind of ducked in under the bar as it was closing. But yeah, there was a lot of prejudice. There was a lot of I mean, I grew up hearing a lot of ethnic jokes against, there was still a very big Polish community, and keeping the culture alive in our town. It was one of the heaviest concentrations of Polish nationals in the country or anywhere in the world, actually. And not anymore, but yeah, so I was shocked to find out that um, the first immigration laws were meant to keep me out. I already had learned enough about the more about the story about the slavery and more about the Native American. I don't know that much about the Asian American story.
Irish American story is an
The
interesting one
That I
too.
was almost like, why am I surprised? Why should I be surprised?
Uh,
Huh?
in in the
Oh yeah, I knew some of
1840s,
that.
clear up
I
to
knew
my
some of
grandpa
that.
in 1940, in the 1940s. He wouldn't tell when he went to fight in World War II that he was of Irish descent. He claimed English because he would not have got to be a bombardier because the prejudice was still in place against the Irish. The old signs used to say, "No Irish need apply."
Yeah. In that area, nasty. No,
Yeah.
have you seen that beer commercial that was on YouTube where no Irish need apply? I don't know if it was I don't know how authentic his accent was, and I know I can't do a good one, so I'm not gonna try. Um, he's like, no Irish need apply. Who built this, huh? Who did that, huh? Who brought you this, huh? No Irish need apply, and on he went. But it was a commercial for like some kind of supposedly Irish beer. Who knows if it really is? Uh,
But
yeah.
I think I know
Yes,
the
I
one
have
you're
heard.
referring to. I've
It
seen
was
it.
as bad, I think, as it was to be black, to be Irish.
I believe at one point they did lump it basically the
Yeah,
same.
I wanted to
Irish were
record
called
that
white
one. I
monks,
thought it was pretty good.
if that's any. point. But yeah,
Yeah.
just the multi-layered
They
studies of
said,
like how
I
we
know that they did a supposed IQ test. Yeah.
well, what they didn't realize at that time was the reason most of Europe could read was because of Irish
Your
scholars
audio
that
is
traveled
gone.
around teaching everybody because they had their cultural renaissance with reading and writing happened as the Roman Empire fell. So it's just one of those things. But yeah, but back on our rewilding subject, what are your goals in
Yeah.
rewilding within your urban
They
setting?
whoever really starts getting stuff going, they seem to get pegged as the enemy next time and then told that they don't know how to do nothing.
Truth.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
Uh Trying to cut my expenses down so that I can afford to do the art and things that I really want to do without having to and be able to put my time into it without having to tear up the environment for one thing, and without having to rely on the system and the man and a paycheck to pay my bills. Um, Acceptance is a little bit better than it used to be when I first had that goal, but now that I have that other reason.
I think we cut.
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay, I think we cut out about when we were getting ready to talk about where the struggle. No, what are your goals in rewilding within your own urban setting? I think we were getting started on.
I have a lot of them. Uh, First of all, I need to try to get off the grid as much as I can because I think that the global economic system is as unstable as it is exploitative. Another thing I learned in anthro class as we looked at human civilizations and constructs and societies over the centuries is that the more complicated it is, the more likely it is to break down. And their solutions to things breaking down is to make them more complicated all the time. And they think that it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. Um, so, the less I have to rely on that to survive, the better. The less I and anybody that can come in contact with me and get inspired and, the neighborhood and stuff can rely on that, the better. It's not just urban in that it's in a city. It's a it's not the hood like the stereotypical you can't go outside in daylight or you'll get your head blown off kind of thing, but it's a higher crime, lower income, uh rough schools and high dropout rates, high levels of theft and vandalism stuff area. And the system is failing people here anyway.
Yeah.
So the more that we can get off of it, the better everybody's gonna do. So that's probably goal number one. Um, I'm not one of those people who wants to cut out electronics and computers altogether. I get refurbished electronics. Um, I would like to encourage the self-repair and the refurbish and reuse the raw materials, the copper and the different things from old electronics rather than throwing it away and letting it leak into the water supply. Just pull that out and reuse it, remanufacture it, and instead of having to go mine more stuff while using that to pollute your own water supply or someone else's. I want to support that. Um, but a lot of my goals personally have a lot to do with electronics and technology, apart from the rewilding. So I guess I'm sort of going for, I don't remember what it's called, but I guess there was this movie that was supposed to be post-apocalyptic, and they had like super high tech things that were more advanced than what was available at the time. But it was also very back to earth and back to uh, connected with the dirt and quote unquote primitive in other ways. It was sort of a mad fusion of the two. And I guess that's sort of what I'm going for is
kind of a futuristic primitive
trying to
steampunkish
do as little
almost.
harm as possible. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But yeah. And rather than post-apocalyptic, it's like preparing for apocalyptic, because you know that everybody kind of can see that this is going to end up breaking down sometime.
Yeah, in one way or another.
I don't consider myself a prepper. Like, I'm not building bunkers with tin hats.
Well, the coming
Yeah,
collapse,
I'm
in
not
one way
into
or another,
building
we're all
bunkers with
facing it.
tin hats and stacking up guns to shoot my neighbors.
Oh, please no.
Yeah, I think I'd rather just help, mitigate the damage in my own life and people around me as much as possible. Rely on money as little as possible. Um, to get things done and to survive. There's probably always going to be a need for some of it, but
Or some sort of trade
I'd kind of
medium.
like to get, when things get a little bit better, to get for me to get a couple of other houses in the neighborhood around here one at a time and make them ecological, having learned about a bunch of stuff on this one. It's taking longer with this one because I'm learning as I go and running into all the problems, but I think I'll be tearing the top part down and making an A-frame roof over it, and then making basement houses, because this area is severe mid-latitude. It gets super cold, it gets super hot, and there's not that much in between most of the time. We were really blessed this year with a lot more in between than usual, but it's not always like that. And the extremes are getting like worse. It's leaning more towards hot, but we can be suddenly hit with like 20 below zero and 70 below wind chills, and then have freezing rain and sleet where it's not fully in freezing yet within a few days during the winter, and it makes everyone sick. So staying indoors during the winter and keeping my own temperature with hopefully with wood fire. Um, I had the emerald ash borer and a fungal disease called heart rot killed two very large trees on my 8th-acre lot. And my other maple tree in the front yard by the street, since I know what heart rot is now and how to identify it, it also has heart rot, and so do the maple across the street and all the other ones down the block that I've seen. So there's not going to be a shortage of wood around here. There's no cure for that. And we can't really let that stuff fall on our houses and across the fairly busy road out here. So, I mean, there's not going to be a shortage of wood anytime soon that I can see. I mean, just on my own yard, I've really got a couple, I think I might have a couple winters worth or more of wood, but I have to get it down a little at a time. But yeah, that's, trying to be as self-sufficient, and I could pay to have that stuff hauled off, which I've heard can actually help spread the affliction that caused the death of those trees and make the pandemic of those trees worse. Um, and I don't want to do that. So if you move it as little as possible so it can stay right here, and then you have to burn it to destroy that stuff. So I might as well, I'm not having to go and kill something to keep my house warm.
Right.
I'm learning. I've got my wood stove downstairs and I made my first attempt at a fire. Right now I'm running it out a basement window. I'm gonna have to connect it to the chimney, I think. Um, there used to be a coal furnace down there, and so it's patched, and there's openings to connect something to. But I have to get into that stuff. That's going to be an interesting project. But at the moment, it's running out a basement window, and I found out I don't know how to make a efficient fire very well, and the house was filling up with smoke after a while. I think I put pieces of wood about 2 or 3 inches in diameter in there, and when that happened, it started smoking, and the smoke just kept coming, so I ended up going outside and running the hose down the spout that was coming out the window, and then I filled a bucket and doused it on the inside, and stopped it because I couldn't breathe down there, and my rabbits and my I are in the basement, and I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. I'm gonna have to work on my fire building skills a lot. I've got plenty of wood. I just have to learn how to properly use it. But there's so many learning curves, you know. But anyway, that to answer your question, that's my goals is to try to take as little from nature as I can, restore as much back since it's been robbed so badly as I can, and uh pretty much that, yeah.
You
I'll probably
spoke,
get all sorts of artistic inspiration from it once it starts to have a garden that pops, as they say, you know.
yeah. You've spoken a little bit about some of your struggles, but what are the struggles you found in rewilding in the setting that you're in?
I'm somewhat in the hood, and when I had a little higher income than I currently do, I hired a gentleman across the street to help me out with some stuff, and he was supposed to be cutting some stuff with a chainsaw. He ran off with my chainsaw, and I was and didn't do anything, and I was like, "You did what?" And then he came. I was like, "Where's my chainsaw?" He's like, "I'll get it. I'll get it to you tomorrow." The next day, he didn't get my stuff done. I was like, it was late at night, and I went and he was borrowing some live trap things because he has a raccoon in his roof, and he I guess it comes out around the house, and he had him sitting next to his house, and I went and took him back, and I was like, "Where is my chainsaw, and when are you gonna do this?" And I was like, "Give me back my chainsaw now." He's like, "Okay." So I was like, "No, not tomorrow." He's like, "I promise I'm gonna get it to you tomorrow." I'm like, "I've heard that before. Give it back." And I was like, "You're not doing anything." I'd already given him an advance on his pay too, because I mean I hired him before, and at first he did a good job. And I was like, "What is this?" And he's like, "My my chainsaw was locked in somebody else's garage as he was doing a work for somebody else, telling him it was his chainsaw. He was using it to get in on something else. And then he was going to come and do my stuff after he was done with my chainsaw. Needless to say, I didn't hire him anymore. Um, but yeah, I mean, I actually gave him a few breaks. But yeah, there's problems like that. You've got people like that, and I was lucky. He might have just run off with it and kept it and then hawked it, as some people would do. Um, uh, so like I know where he lives, so it's kind of hard for him to get away from me too much. But you have problems like that. You've got dishonest people. I had someone I thought was a friend come out and help out for a while, and he turned out to be a peeping Tom. And sometimes when you're in the middle of a project, you sort of can't go back. Or there's as much work or more to go back as to go forward. and I was in the middle of that, and I couldn't do it by myself, so I had a sexual predator at my house in a tent out in my backyard for a few days. And then another friend, when I told him about it, he changed he had plans to go to Chicago to go have fun, but he quit. He changed his plans and came down here and helped me instead, and we got him out of here. But being a female living by yourself in this kind of neighborhood presents challenges. And when you're trying to rewild and you're trying to do it by yourself, see, wild living isn't meant for human beings to be done by yourself. You're very limited in it's just too slow. It's difficult, and then you have to hack ways around doing it by yourself. And there's some trial and error with that. On top of the trial and error, and you can't just ask the neighbors because you don't know what they're going to do necessarily. And so and I found out hiring people. I hired I've got a greenhouse roof on my shed, and actually that's where I dry my firewood right now. I've got some stuff across the beams of the rafters, and there's wood sitting on that drying under the greenhouse. It's black stuff that it's sitting on, black steel.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I tore the roof off, I hired somebody, and I'm pretty sure it was him because he would have known when I was working, which was 12-hour shifts over the weekend, overnights, and he finished supposedly on the morning I was supposed to go to work, and he stole my air compressor.
Mm.
So I've had people that I brought out here to help with me outright steal my stuff or use it as an opportunity to borrow it, and sometimes do a little bit of damage to it. And then getting off of fossil fuels with a vehicle. I've I'm My vehicle doesn't go that fast, and I've had people like they could go around me, and instead they just sort of drive behind me real slow, especially at night. That is very scary. And I pull over and they lay on their horn as they drive past and um, yell things out the windows sometimes. But it's it's there I try to avoid situations like that when I'm writing, but there's times when I can't. And when I can't, I just have to swallow it, and it's a white knuckle ride going wherever I'm going. Um, it's better to be on the scooter after dark as in or driving around here than walking. But there's times that I have to stop, or there's times that it can still be a little bit unnerving. Like I was coming back from the store last night and I saw red and blue lights, and I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just something simple, but maybe there's somebody going to be running and armed and dangerous, and they're going to have like 85 blue lights out here, and I need to go in the house. I don't know. It was maybe a routine traffic stop is probably, there was only one car, and they were in the parking lot of a gas station. I wasn't having to go right by them. So I don't like to go right by them. I guess for the same reason that cops say that sometimes, when they get out of the car, they don't know what they're going to find. That it might be somebody really, really bad, and this might get potentially dangerous, or it might not. For the same reason, I don't like to drive past directly, like side by side along something like that
Yeah,
in this
completely.
area, because we have a lot of drugs in this area. We have human trafficking in this area. We have, we have the Crips, the Bloods, and the little bit of MS-13 that was here all got run out. But that opened the door for a lot of really messed up, stupid kids that sometimes get a hold of guns, and they're the ones that are shooting not at somebody in that lifestyle, but at just whoever. And they're stupid enough to do it in broad daylight or on busy streets right underneath the street light. I halfway witnessed something like that one time a few years ago. when I first actually purchased instead of rented this house. So, I mean, living in an area like that has its challenges. Doing it alone has its challenges. Being female and doing it alone has its challenges. And then when you combine that with trying to rewild, it slows things down very dramatically and creates additional stress. Is it enough to make me change my mind? No.
That leads me very well into how can the rewilding community at large help those within settings like yours be able to rewild more? How can we build that sense of network and community and help each other out, even though we might not be face to face?
Depending, um, uh, well, I wasn't face to face with the buddy that came down here when I ended up having the wrong person in my house helping me out. Um, if you're close enough to people to be able to provide backup like that, it's definite. I mean, there you can't say enough about how positive that is.
True.
Um, I guess if you're going to coming out and helping sometimes, I mean, if it's possible to get out there and pitch in and help out somebody that doesn't have a community around them to help with what they're doing, if they're breaking new ground, which I kind of am as far as I know in this area. um if you come out and have a cookout with somebody and show them how to do something you already know how to do and expedite the learning curve, uh you can maybe work out some sort of a, maybe film the situation or something, and get another video dropped that way, or uh find some way that you can have a give and take with that. But a lot of people in an urban setting that are trying to rewild don't have a lot of money. Some of them do, some of them are, so some of them are really not doing that well. But you have to be careful, if it's somebody that you don't already know, about going there too. You don't go by yourself, and come out and look at it before you commit to coming out and doing something. And don't commit to living in the person's house. Stay in an Airbnb or something and come out and see what's going on, uh, and not by yourself before you went. But um, a lot of it's not always easy for people in urban settings to get out somewhere and get hands-on. I mean, maybe in big cities, I guess Detroit and some places have so many people in them, and eventually you're going to have more than one person. My town has 75,000 people. It has a big city crime rate, but it's not that big. um, if there's not already an existing network in the area, um, going out and planting a seed of some hands-on with somebody, that's probably the biggest thing I can think of. But they're gonna want to know who you are first, and you should know who
Totally.
they are first. But coming out and having sessions that are hands-on and say, hey, everybody, come one, come all, that helps.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
If that
much.
makes any sense.
No, it totally does. Thank you so much.
It's not always safe.
True. Thank you so much for everything you've shared with us today. And I hope that you have many more long years rewilding. And I'll say to you, as I say in my blogs, keep on rewilding, and I'll see you on down the trail. I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Rewilder's Journey. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, please subscribe via Patreon. Keep on rewilding, and I'll see you on down the trail.